So, for the last I think 4 sessions now, Prabhus and Matajis, we have been looking at this very important concept of surrender, which is known in Shastras as Sharanagati. And Sharanagati is very nicely encapsulated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, 22nd chapter, 100th verse. Is that what is being shown now? Oh, okay. No, not to worry, Prabhu. The only problem is I don't know what is being shown. That's the thing. Let us recap again what the 6 items of surrender are, because we are now focusing and immersing ourselves in understanding what does it mean to surrender. When we say we are surrendered to Krishna, there must be 6 symptoms of that surrender. And when all symptoms are present, then the devotee is considered to have been surrendered. So it is not an artificial or mechanical process, but it is a very dynamic process actually. The most important point you find in CC Madhya Leela, 22nd chapter, 100th verse, and this is of course coming from this important shloka. Sharanagati is coming from Hari Bhakti Vilas. So we know it's a very important shloka. And the most important thing we understand here is this idea that's encapsulated in surrender. And that idea is very nicely given by Purushottam Maas. Because in the very beginning of Purushottam Maas, remember we shared with you all the very nice pastime of how this month was an extra month. And the month, because she was extra, she did not fit into any of the established order of things. Therefore, she was neglected, she was abandoned, she was rejected. And she decided that she could find no shelter because there was no shelter available for her. The Devatas rejected her, her fellow monks also rejected her, and therefore where was she supposed to go? So this is very, very significant for us because in this material world, very often, we live in a world of duality. Either we accept some people or we reject some people. Sometimes we reject people, sometimes we accept people. Sometimes we reject things, sometimes we accept things. And like that, this whole world passes its time actually. In the spiritual world, there is no acceptance and rejection because everyone is fully surrendered to Krishna. So only Krishna is there. That is why a very important mood of a devotee in this material world is to make sure that we plan our lives in such a way that there is nothing in our lives, factually speaking, except for us to serve Krishna and his devotees. That's why it is nicely stated, Nanyam vadami, na shunomi, na chintayami, Nanyam smarami, na bhajami, na cha ashrayami, Krishna tvadiya charanambujamantirena, Shri Shri Nivasa Purushottam tava dehi dasyam. This shloka is very nice because in this one shloka, all the items of self-surrender is given actually. Very nicely the prayer says, I will not speak anything else. In other words, the first starting point for us to remember Krishna is when we speak. Whatever we speak is what is actually we have heard. Nobody can speak something they have not heard. So actually speaking is actually the indication of what you are hearing. If you're hearing Bhagavatam, you will speak Bhagavatam. If you're not hearing Bhagavatam, you cannot artificially speak Bhagavatam. So the first prayer of the devotee is, I will not speak anything else. The second prayer is, I will not hear anything else, and I will not hear anyone else. That is very important. We should hear no one else except Krishna. Krishna means his devotees. So we don't hear anyone except Krishna, and we don't want to hear about anything except Krishna. The third prayer is, I will not remember anyone else. This is very important. Remembrance of the Lord is perfection of our spiritual life. So how much we can remember Krishna, to that extent we are surrendered. The next prayer is, I will not worship anyone or anything else. This is very important. Because when we worship someone, it means that person is very important to us. And the only person who should be important to us and worthy of worship is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is why the prayer ends by saying, Krishna, your lotus feet are situated within my heart. This is very important. Chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita is the hallmark of Purushottam Maas. And Purushottam Yoga is the title for chapter 15. And the reason why Purushottama is considered to be the form of the Lord that Purushottam Maas actually went to take shelter of is because Krishna alone is perfect. He is alone perfect. There is no other perfected entity in this world. And therefore, the prayer says that Krishna, your lotus feet are situated within my heart. Because in our hearts we should have no place for anything and anyone except Krishna. And then the prayer ends by saying, Sri Srinivasa, Purushottama, please engage me in your devotional service. And that is the only prayer that we need to give to Krishna actually. All other prayers are material, Prabhus and Matajis. All other prayers, even spiritual prayers, are what we call servants of this principle. What is this principle? That somehow or another we are always engaged in remembering Krishna in devotional service. So this point is so nicely stated, I think I remember Swami Prakash Prabhu so nicely bringing up Kunti Mata's prayers last week. And there was a point, if you remember, where Kunti Mata says, Yesham na chanyat bhavata padambujat. Very important. As Krishna is leaving in the chariot and she has chanted her beautiful prayers, she tells Krishna, Krishna, we have no means of protection other than your lotus feet. So this is the mood of a devotee. A devotee is fully convinced that there is no other protection except the lotus feet of Krishna. Last week, if you remember, on Sunday, we discussed a very important topic, and that was the mercy of Krishna in the aspect of our surrender. And we also remember talking about how that mercy of the Lord is corresponding to the sincere endeavor of the devotee, right? So today what we will do is, we want to highlight the great devotees who actually fulfill the 6 divisions of surrender. And by learning about how they fulfill them in their practical life, we can also understand or maybe get a glimpse of how we should behave in our own spiritual life. Swami Prakash Prabhu, before you just came, I was just saying that we'll extend the Purushottam Maas classes to next weekend so that you can finish Parikshit Maharaj, because we are all eagerly looking forward to hearing that. And I'll see what I have to say also, because you have so much, so I think let's do it next week also. Is that okay, Prabhuji? Of course, we won't tell you which day either one of us is doing. Yeah? That is very good. We want to smash this nonsensical idea that we come because somebody is speaking. Prabhupada would declare it as nonsense. Prabhupada would sit down like a humble soul on Vyasasan and listen to his disciples speaking in front of him. And he relished it because they were repeating what he stated. And here we are, in the material mode, thinking that we have to hear because we like someone or we don't like someone. That is not bhagavatam, that is not devotional service. That is mental service. So this is a very important point actually. So look at the first 2 limbs of surrender, accepting and rejecting. These 2 limbs of surrender are actually 2 sides of the same coin. Because when you accept something, automatically you are actually rejecting something. When you have just accepted today that you will come at 9 o'clock to hear Bhagavatam, you have rejected the use of that time for something else, isn't it? It's a very simple thing. If you say that at this moment I want to talk to somebody, I have just rejected my opportunity to speak to someone else, because you can't speak to 2 people at the same time. So accepting and rejecting always go hand in hand together. And in devotional service, when we accept something favorable, it is implied that we must reject something unfavorable. If you think that you can accept all the things favorable in devotional service and on the sideline still do all the things unfavorable for devotional service, then Shastras tell us it is like a man who puts his feet, 1 foot and 1 foot, in 2 different boats. And the boats are not anchored, by the way. So as the boats move away, you try to balance yourself, 1 foot here and 1 foot there. In the end, right, you will fall off both boats. And not even in one place, but you will fall off both. You will fall into the water. So please, the most important principle in devotional service we have to accept. If you want to become surrendered, whatever that you are accepting favorably for devotional service, you must be prepared to reject something. That acceptance of favorable things and rejection of unfavorable things is how you make advancement. If you continue to get stuck in accepting and you accept that which you should reject also, then the effect of it is that we never make advancement. We will always be in the level of what we call Kanishta Adhikari. Our devotional service will be like an unripened fruit. An unripened mango, Prabhupada says, never tastes good, but it's still mango. But there is no value to it. Nobody wants to eat unripened mango, isn't it? When you tell someone, I want to eat mango, isn't it implied that you want to eat nice ripened mango that comes in season? It is. Nobody says, I want to eat unripened mango. And yet, when we want to reject something, it is so difficult for us to accept that we must reject to accept. So this is a very important point. Who taught us this principle in Srimad Bhagavatam? Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj is a great proponent of this principle. What did he do? Bali Maharaj accepted his service to Vamandev. It's very important. He accepted. The moment Vamandev came in the form of a Brahmana and asked for 3 steps of land, only with his little tiny feet, Vamandev, his request was accepted by Bali Maharaj wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. And even when Sukracharya told him, wait a minute, there is a trickery to it. There is sorcery and trickery to it, as we say. Because this person is actually who? He could be Vishnu. And if he is Vishnu, he is not going to cover the place in 3 paces. It may be 3 paces, but Vishnu's feet is very big. They are not like Vamandev's feet. But it didn't matter to Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj accepted that his service to Vamandev must continue. Why? Because he made the argument that even if you tell me to stop now, I cannot stop. Why? I am the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. I come from an exalted dynasty of great devotees. This Brahmana is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If he is not Vishnu, then even then as a Brahmana and devotee, I cannot go back on my word. And it's my duty to serve him. See? When we realize that there are challenges in our devotional service, but we still remain favorable to discharging it, Krishna will give us the strength as Purushottama to do it. Krishna inspired Bali Maharaj to not swerve and lose his determination. He was very determined. And in so doing, in accepting his service to Vamandev and wanting to fulfill his promise, Bhagavatam also told us, what did he reject simultaneously? Simultaneously, he rejected the instructions of Sukracharya. And Sukracharya was supposed to be his spiritual master. And because he rejected the instructions of Sukracharya, Sukracharya cursed him that he would lose everything. All his opulences he would lose. So, that which appeared to be very favorable, all the opulences was what Bali Maharaj was attached to initially. But when he decided that he wanted to render devotional service and surrender to Krishna, when he accepted the service of wanting to fulfill what the Lord wanted, automatically he was given the strength and he made a decision to reject what Sukracharya was saying. Very difficult to do, because what Sukracharya was saying is what any materialist would say. You're going to go bankrupt, man. That's what he was saying basically. Not in Bhagavatam words, but in normal words. You're going to go bankrupt. And the truth is, if employer becomes bankrupt, then spiritual master in this sense also becomes bankrupt, right? So Sukracharya was worried. So this is the point that we must understand. In the 8th canto, 20th chapter, 16th verse. 8th canto, 20th chapter, 16th verse. This point is very nicely stated as a principle of the first 2 divisions of surrender. Evam shaptaha swaguruna satyana chalito mahan vamanaya dadau enam architva udaka purvakam. The translation is good. The important point is the second line. Satyana chalito mahan. If you look at the word to word, Satyan means truthfulness. In this case, the truthfulness was the determination to stick to his vow. And na chalito mahan, he was not moved. He was not moved. And the translation is very nice. Even after being cursed in this way by his own spiritual master, Bali Maharaj, being a great personality, never deviated from his determination and offered water to Vamandev, and gift of land is promised.
What is the takeaway from this? When we want to accept something favorable for Krishna, and we want to reject something unfavorable, which doesn't make us remember Krishna, we have to do it on the basis of non-deviation of our determination. Very important. When our determination is not deviated by something unfavorable which we are attracted to from the illusory energy of the Lord, Krishna will give strength to our determination. He will. He will bless us. That is the mood of Krishna and the spiritual masters. And the beauty of this surrender is you see in your own life, and this is seen in Bhagavatam, because Bali Maharaj was accepting of the service favorable to Krishna and firm and determined to reject that which came in the way of that service. Not only was he benefited, but his wife Vindhyavali also became benefited. Why? This is the principle of sadhu sangha. Because the husband was a devotee and he performed an activity along the lines of surrender, the wife saw the husband and followed his way. That is why it is so important, that we each become repositories of good examples as devotees. This is not just about husband being example or wife being example. This is about everyone becoming an example, actually. It's very important. And in Vedic system, if the husband claims to be the master of the house, then he jolly well behave like a devotee. If the husband cannot set the standards of devotional service, then what is he going to influence, or who is he going to influence in the house? If the spiritual master cannot set the standards for the disciples, how can the disciples become inspired? If each and every devotee here cannot set an example to everyone else who is dependent on you or who are in your vicinity of friendship, what is the value of our surrender? So you see, in the principle of acceptance and rejection, so much of beauty is there in understanding. One is determination. Second, that determination to reject is also known, Prabhupada says in the purport of Madhya Lila. No, it's okay, Prabhupada, don't worry. In the purport of that verse we saw, Prabhupada says when you reject something unfavorable, there is a term for it. It's called renunciation. Renunciation. That's what it means actually. So this is very important. Second example of acceptance and rejection in Shastras, Bhagavatam, is the example of Vritrasur. Vritrasur did not accept or reject anything according to his sentiment or his whims. This is very important. So when we want to reject something or accept something in devotional service, we should not do it capriciously. Prabhupada uses the word capriciously in Bhagavad Gita. The word capriciously means whimsically. I just do it when I feel like it. Don't feel like it, don't. Wake up today, I think of Krishna. Wake up tomorrow, not in the mood to remember Krishna. Then I reject, then I accept, then I reject, then I accept. That is not surrender. That is surrender to the mind. That means you're lost. That surrender means you're gone. When the Japanese surrendered to the British in Singapore, they were gone. They were not liberated. They were killed. Or they were imprisoned. But spiritual surrender is very different. Spiritual surrender is when you put your hands up, you actually liberate it. You gain. But when you want to hold on to something in spiritual life, you lose. Very important. When you want to hold on to matter, fame, name, position, designation, you will lose it. Vritrasur is the example of that. In the 6th canto, 11th chapter, 20th verse, very, very nice verse. Nanu esha vajras Tapasa kratejasa hare dadichi tapasa tacha tejasaha tenaiva shatrun jahi vishnu yantrito yato hari vijaya shri gunas tataha. This verse tells us how Vritrasur accepted and rejected. See his thinking, and we can learn so much from him. He's speaking to Indra. By the way, you know that Vritrasur came to kill Indra, right? And he came to kill Indra because Indra deserved it. He just killed the Brahmana Vishwarupa. And therefore, Twashta, the father of Vishwarupa, brought forth Vritrasur with the sole aim to kill Indra because of the great sin of killing a Brahmana. But Vritrasur was actually Chitraketu Maharaj in his previous life. Therefore, he was a devotee already. So when he came, he had only one dharma actually. The dharma of Vritasura in Bhagavatam was to vanquish Indra. But Vritasura realized very early on that even though he was actually born and was designed to kill Indra, Indra had been favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's why he sings this. In the battlefield, Indra lost his weapon because Vritasura was so powerful, that he just threw the mace back and Indra fell with Airavata. At that point, Indra became morose because Indra thought now Swargaloka is gone. But Vritasura, he told Indra, get up and fight. Why? Because he says, you have a special weapon known as Vajra. This thunderbolt is so powerful not because of anything. It is powerful because it has been made from the bones of the great sage Dadichi. And it has been blessed and sanctioned by Krishna. Krishna himself told you, go to Dadichi and get his bones and make the weapon. And Krishna also assured you, Indra, that with this weapon, you will be able to defeat Vritasura. So he says, since you have come here to kill me in accordance with Lord Vishnu's order, victory is yours. You see? And this is spoken by a devotee whose defeat is assured. Just think about it. His defeat in this battle was assured. But was Vritasura rejecting it? What was he accepting here? He was accepting the will of Krishna. So acceptance actually means that when we accept that which is favorable to devotional service, what is favorable to devotional service? What is really favorable to devotional service is what is the will of Krishna. What is the will of our spiritual master? Their will is what becomes favorable to our bhakti. When we reject their will, we reject their wishes, then we are accepting that which is unfavorable to devotional service. So actually, Vritasura accepted that Krishna would defeat him and Indra would become victorious through Krishna. Not an easy thing to accept, especially when both of them are devotees, but Krishna seems to have sided one. That's the word he uses, Vishnu Yantrito. Vishnu Yantrito means you are guaranteed to win. You're going to win because Krishna has sided with you. Imagine two brothers or two sisters and one of them realizes my father has favored one person. You get very angry, isn't it? First you get angry with your father, next you slap your sister. That's what you do. But Vritasura did not do that. Why? Because he accepted that this is Krishna's will. Therefore, in that acceptance, there was favorable feelings. And because he accepted that, what did he reject? He rejected Swargaloka. He rejected what Indra was accepting. What was Indra accepting? Indra was accepting Swargaloka. That's what he wanted. Indra was happy Krishna was hiding with him. But more happy than that was the fact that he would get Swargaloka. That was what he was really aiming for. So, for Vritasura, that was not important. He said, since Lord Vishnu has sided with you, then three things will happen. Victory will be there, opulence will be there, and all good qualities will be there. Isn't this the nice point that is given? So we should understand this. When we accept and we reject things which are unfavorable or favorable, we should not accept them or reject them with grudge. We should not have hesitation. And we should not do it out of frustration and resentment. The more frustrated one is in accepting that which is favorable to Krishna, actually the more we are rejecting it. Think about it. If you accept something in a grudging manner, you might as well just reject it. That is why there is a spectrum of surrender. At the lowest end of spectrum is a devotee who is resentful. He is a devotee but he's resentful. Why Krishna never helps me? Why I'm always in difficulty? Why this, why that, why this, why that? Such a devotee, Prabhupada says, eventually leaves devotional service. Because he is not favorable to what Krishna is giving. He cannot accept, you see. So, favorable means to accept. Unfavorable means to reject. So, if someone gives you an opportunity to do devotional service, but you are not favorable to it, you have rejected it. You see the point? But if someone has given you something material, but you are not favorable to it, then you have actually rejected something which you should reject. It's a very important point actually. So, for acceptance and rejection, they must be genuine. They must be based on spiritual knowledge. They must be based on faith. In that way, accepting and rejecting becomes collectively what we call renunciation. The correct knowledge of this is given by Pingala. I've quoted Pingala at least 2 times in previous classes because her prayer of 11th canto, 8th chapter, 31st verse is very helpful for the first 2 hymns of surrender. Shantam samipe ramanam pradam Vitta pradam nityam imam vihaya akamadam dukkha bayadishakha moha pradam tucchamaham bhaje agnya. See the nice translation. I am such a fool that I have given up the service of that person who, being eternally situated within my heart, is actually most dear to me. This is how we accept and become favorable to Krishna. This is the word. Next point. That most dear one is the Lord of the universe. He is the one who gives real love and happiness. And He is the source of all prosperity. But He was in my heart all this time and I have completely neglected Him. This line represents the repentance mood of a devotee. The moment we repent, we become favorable to Krishna. So determination helps us become favorable. Repentance also helps us to become favorable. Very important. That one line is the line of repentance. And the moment she has said that, she goes on to explain. And therefore now she is rejecting it, she is explaining. I have completely neglected Him. Instead, I have ignorantly served insignificant men who can never satisfy my real desires and who have simply brought me unhappiness, fear, anxiety, lamentation, and illusion. So when we are not accepting something favorable to Krishna consciousness, the effect is that we will always be unhappy, we will be fearful, we will be anxious, we will lament, and definitely we will be in illusion. Because we rejected Krishna. All these symptoms were felt by who? Sukracharya. All these symptoms were felt by who? Indra on the battlefield. When Indra fell, he was lamenting. When he saw Vritrasu very powerful, he was fearful. When he saw Vritrasu could not be killed, he became anxious. Vargaloka is slipping. When he fell again the second time and the thunderbolt left his arms, his hands, he began to lament, oh alas, this is finished. And all this showed how illusioned he was. See? So this is how Bhagavatam teaches us this very, very important point. So we should understand one last point. That when we want to surrender to Krishna, the best way to understand surrender to Krishna is now to understand that acceptance and rejection is premised on the next limb of surrender. And the next limb of surrender is the conviction that Krishna will give the devotee protection. This is very important. If you want a little bit of injection on how to accept favorable devotion service, then become convinced that Krishna will give you protection. That convincing feeling that you have, that faith that you have, will inspire you to do favorable devotion service. Isn't it? If you think about it, it's common sense. When we become convinced only Krishna can protect us, naturally we will do things which are acceptable to Krishna. And we will renounce things which don't bring us to Krishna. So this third limb of surrender is very, very important. And in this mood, the devotee always feels in the heart, no one else can actually give me protection. And this being convinced of, Prabhupada says, is actually called faith. So in the third limb of surrender, the same point of conviction that Krishna will give us protection can be summarized in one word, that we have faith in Krishna. Very important point. That is the third limb of surrender. But Prabhupada also makes it a point to tell us that this faith that we have in Krishna is very different from the impersonalist having faith in Krishna. The impersonalist has faith in Krishna because he sees there's some benefit to coming out of birth and death. He wants to come out of birth and death, and he wants to find some benefit in liberation. But a devotee of the Lord does not want any benefit when he has faith in Krishna. The benefit is that he is very, very happy to just do service for Krishna. That's all. That eagerness to do service is actually the hallmark of faith. The more eager we are to do service, the more we will become convinced that Krishna alone can protect us. And when Krishna sees a devotee is convinced that only he can give him protection, then what will he do? That is the time when Krishna will actually inspire the devotee and give him protection from any dangers of devotional service. This is Krishna's promise actually. The greatest danger in devotional service, Prabhus and Mataji, is not birth, death, old age and disease. It's actually the forgetfulness of Krishna. When we forget Krishna, then birth, death, old age, disease will automatically come. But if you always remember Krishna, then you have just severed the cycle of birth and death. And where there is no birth and death, then how can there be old age and disease? You see. So this is the mood that is very important. And who signifies this mood? Is Vritasura again. Because Vritasura accepted on the battlefield that I'm going to lose. Not easy, yeah? Normally when we take up devotional service, there is this at the back of our mind, we do have this expectation when I come to Krishna will take care of my job. He'll make sure every year, I'm promoted. He won't put me on the street. Krishna will make sure my children's education and, their pathway becomes very nice. Sometimes when I ask devotees, Prabhu, Mataji, how are you? Are you happy in Krishna consciousness? We're very happy. Why? Oh, because our son just got a job, and my wife's health has recovered. But the question was very different. Right? The question was, are you happy in devotional service? Yes. Why? Oh, because of everything that's material. Something is wrong somewhere, isn't it? So in that way, if supposing that devotee is put in Vritasura's position and he's going to lose and be killed, he will immediately lose faith in Krishna. He will lose faith in Krishna. And the third surrender item of Krishna will be gone. Will be gone. You see. So that's why the biggest challenge for us is to be convinced and have faith and conviction that Krishna will give us protection, but not the way we think he should give us protection. Parikshit Maharaj was protected. Why? Not because his body was going to be burned, it will be burned, but because his consciousness was fixed on Krishna. That is our prayer. Our prayer is somehow or another our children should remember Krishna. Our prayer is somehow or another our wives and husbands should remember Krishna. Our prayer is somehow or another our parents should remember Krishna. Yes, health is good, but eventually the body has to go. So this point is very important. And that is why, Vritasura's prayer in 6, 11, 24, 25, 26, those famous prayers, the last few verses, they're so important. Aham hare tava padaikamula dasanudaso bhavitasmi bhuyah manasmareta supate gunamske granita vakarma karotu khaya. The translation is so beautiful. This is the point where he has accepted now that he is going to die. He has accepted now that Indra will become the victor. He is now rejecting any feelings of moroseness. Instead, what is he embracing? The conviction. Look at his conviction. Will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servant? This is his conviction. Lord of my life, may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes. My words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your lordships. Look at the first line of the purport. Prabhupada says so nicely, this verse gives us the sum and substance of devotional life. That's it, full stop. That's all. So if we want to be convinced that only Krishna will give us protection, just remember Vritasura. just remember how he accepted Krishna. How he accepted Krishna's plan for him. How important it is. And instead of wallowing away in self-pity, his mood was just to remember Krishna and pray earnestly, a great desire that somehow I should use my body, my mind, everything that I have in Krishna's service. And then look at how he rejects everything else in the next verse. Nanakavrishtam, nachaparameshtam, na sarvabhaumam, na rasadhipatyam, na yoga siddhi rapunarbhavam va, samanjasatva virahayakashi. Look at what he's rejecting now. For everything that he rejects, it is implied that he's accepting the opposite, isn't it? And as he rejects, how his faith is growing in Krishna. He says that I don't desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka, don't desire the heavenly planets, don't desire the planet of Brahma, don't desire to be the ruler of earthly planets, don't desire the lower planetary systems. I don't desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga. I don't even desire liberation from cycle of birth and death. I don't desire any of this if I have to give up your lotus feet. If I don't have to give up your lotus feet, I'm ready to accept anything. But if I have to give up your lotus feet, I'm prepared to reject anything and everything. How did he have this great faith? Because he was convinced that only Krishna and only Krishna's plan is what we must surrender to. This is the meaning of protection. When we are ready to surrender to Krishna's plan, it means we are ready to be protected by Krishna. If you are not ready to surrender to Krishna's plan, then you cannot say that you want to be protected by Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj is a very good example. Prahlad Maharaj never asked Nrsimhadev to protect him. After so much of harassment from his father, Hiranyakashipu, at no point of his harassment did he even think of calling Krishna for help. Never. There is no prayer in so many chapters of Bhagavatam where he says, Krishna, time out, I can't take this now. Please help me. No, he never does that. And at the end, when Prahlad Maharaj, when Nrsimhadev comes also, and Nrsimhadev says, now you ask from me whatever you want. Even then, he doesn't ask anything. In fact, it's just the opposite. Please liberate my father also. See? Because he was totally aligned. Protection doesn't mean suddenly Krishna comes and protects you from a demon. That's one level of protection. A deeper level of protection is the consciousness that we always are aligned to the will of the Lord. That's why we accept something and that's why we reject something. Very, very important. Very important. And that's why he says his third prayer. Ajata Paksha Ivamataram Kagaha Stanyam Yatavat Shatarashudarta Priyam Priva Vyusitam Vishanna Manoravindakshati Drikshyate Tvam. And he gives three beautiful examples. He says, I'm always yearning for the opportunity to render direct service to you. That's what he's yearning for. This yearning is the conviction that Krishna will give me protection. This is the yearning. So what does he say then? He says, Lotus-eyed Lord, the birds, they have not developed wings. What do? They always look to their mother to return and feed them. This is the mood of surrender. The baby birds are helpless. So they just wait for their mother. In their helplessness, they are not frustrated with mother. They are very patient, You see the baby birds, they are very patient. Why are they patient? Because they know mother is coming. That's why they are patient. If we are patient, it is because we know Krishna is taking care of us. If you are not patient that Krishna is taking care of you, you will end up being patient in hospital. You will. Because you will become very resentful of Krishna. You see? So do you see how it connects actually? Acceptance, rejection, and being convinced that Krishna is our protector. This is how they are all connected. You see? So the baby birds, they have not developed their wings, so they are helpless. But they have full faith. Krishna, my mother is my protector. So they wait. Look at the calf, second example. They're very small. They are tied somewhere. But at the time of milking, they wait for that time. Why? Because that time they can be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers. They are not anxious because they know that at the time of milking, whatever happens, even if there are 1,000 mother cows in front of them, every mother knows the child, every child knows the mother. The mother makes a beeline to the child and will give the child milk. That is all. They have nothing else and nowhere else to see. And the last example is so beautiful. A wife is morose because she waits for her husband to come back, because she is convinced that only he can give her satisfaction. And we are only convinced that only when we are with Krishna will we ever be satisfied. No one else in this world can satisfy us. If you are hoping that people will satisfy you, then our surrender is incomplete. They cannot satisfy us. It is just the nature of this world. No one can satisfy us. We can't satisfy anyone also. No? By logic, we can't. And now we come to the fourth limb of the surrender. And that fourth limb is acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian and master. When we are convinced that Krishna will give us protection, then this next limb becomes very easy. Because then we accept Krishna as our guardian. Nobody else is our guardian except Krishna. Nobody else is our master except Krishna. Prabhupada makes a very important distinction between this limb and the limb before. In that limb, the important point is, we are convinced Krishna will protect us, and therefore that is called faith. In this limb, the devotee accepts Krishna as his supreme maintainer and master. You remember a famous line from Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita? What is that famous line? Source of income is not the source of maintenance. You remember the hunter, what was his name? Mrigari, isn't it? Mrigari was the hunter, and he was hunting animals. Not only was he hunting animals, but actually he was very cruel. He won't kill them one shot, He will shoot them, maim them, and then he will kill them. So Narada Muni was passing by. Who else but Narada Muni? He's all over the place, isn't it? He's everywhere. In Chaitanya Charitamrita he is there, in Bhagavatam he is there, in Padma Purana he is there, in every Purana he is there. So Narada Muni now comes across Mrigari. And what does he tell Mrigari? He tells him that you should not be killing animals like this. If you want to kill them, at least kill them one shot. But don't maim them. And then he preaches and gives him association. By the end of the time spent with the sadhu, Mrigari's heart has changed. And Mrigari now surrenders to his spiritual master Narada and says, henceforth I will not kill anyone. But if I don't kill, this is my sustenance. All these years, I'm in the trade of killing. So if I don't, who will feed my family? And Narada Muni said, don't worry. Just stop this business and concentrate on devotional service. Krishna is the supreme maintainer. He says that one. Krishna is the supreme maintainer. And he is your master. Master means maintainer. Anyone who is master must be able to maintain you. So if somebody comes up to you and says, I am your master, then you must ask that person a question. You can be my master, but can you maintain me? If you can maintain me, you are the master. Most masters who claim to be masters, when they hear you talk about maintenance, they will stop. They will. Because maintenance means money must come out, isn't it? But with Krishna, it is very natural. If you accept him as master, he maintains you. So that day, Mrigari took a leap of faith. And he decided, no more killing. And I will surrender to Krishna. Because he did not kill, what happened? So nice. All his neighbors started hearing that this man has become sadhu. So they were inspired, because Super Soul inspired them in the heart. And what happened? They started coming every day and giving bhoga to Mrigari. Then they taught Mrigari how to grow plants and food. And in that way, Mrigari became self-sufficient. And Prabhupada writes there, the source of income is not the source of maintenance. We may earn money, but we must be convinced that it is only Krishna who is maintaining us. Not your bank balance and your stocks and your shares. Not the boss whom you are employed by. No. It is only Krishna. And that is why Prabhupada uses one very important word in this limb of surrender. He says, one who accepts Krishna as maintainer and master, what does he do? He learns to become dependent on Krishna. Chetasaha sarvakarmani, mayi sanyasaha matparaha. Right? One who becomes dependent on Krishna. Just depend on me and become conscious. So in this limb of surrender, the more we depend on Krishna, and the less we depend on other things which have nothing to do with Krishna, the more we are convinced that Krishna will give us protection, the more we are convinced that Krishna alone will maintain me, then that limb of surrender becomes fulfilled. And a person who really showed this is Gajendra. Gajendra in the 8th canto, I think it is 8-2, last verse. Last verse is 32 or 33. 8-2, 33 or 32. In that last verse, Gajendra exemplifies this limb of surrender. And this verse is very important. Whenever we feel that we cannot surrender and become dependent on Krishna, my Guru Maharaj told me you should study this verse. Every time you become weak in your conviction, because you are losing faith, study this verse. Put it up. Maharaj told me this verse will give you strength, conviction, courage, determination. Very powerful verse. Yakas chinesho badino antakorada prachanda vega abhidhavato prisham Vitam prapannam paripati adbhayan mrityu pradavataranam tam imahi. See the meaning. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is certainly not known to everyone. This we must accept, Prabhu's and Mataji's. Krishna is not known to everyone, but he is very powerful and he is very influential. This is Krishna. Have you noticed how in your life Krishna doesn't come directly? Sometimes he comes from the side. Sometimes he comes from this side. Sometimes he comes in the form of a devotee who slowly influences you to become devotee. He's very powerful, but he's very subtle actually. Then, the Gajendra says, the serpent of time is very powerful. It is also very fearful. And it is endlessly chasing everyone. And it is ready to swallow anyone. And Gajendra says, but if a devotee seeks your shelter against such a serpent, the Lord will give him protection. For even death runs away in fear of the Lord. Therefore, what does he do then? Mrityu pradavati aranam tam imahi. Imahi means I surrender or take shelter. And now Gajendra says, I therefore take shelter of him, because he is great, he is supreme, and he is authority. And therefore, he is paramparayana. This verse, doesn't it give you courage when you read it? Because it tells us, that even though time is so powerful like a serpent, Krishna is time. Krishna is time. The same mood was exemplified by Ambarish Maharaj in the 9th canto, 4th chapter. In the 9th canto, 4th chapter, very nicely we see how Ambarish Maharaj was harassed by Durvasa Muni. Because Durvasa Muni thought, he was actually envious of the great king. So when he came out after taking a long time and putting Ambarish Maharaj in a very awkward situation of not breaking his fast, Ambarish Maharaj decided that he and his wife would break the fast by just taking a sip of water. It's not like they drank a whole mineral bottle. Just a sip, that's all. It is neither breaking nor is it considered not broken. It's one of those in-between things in life. But because Durvasa Muni's siddhi was powerful, he could know immediately, he took water. And so he found fault. That's why my Guru Maharaj said, we should be very careful to follow Ambarish Maharaj and not Durvasa Muni. Because the tendency of Durvasa Muni's followers is that they find fault. Durvasa has this problem, He's always envious and therefore he's critical. And because he's envious and critical, he becomes very angry all the time. Have you noticed he's got major anger issues? He has. Everywhere he goes, he has major anger issues. Why? Because at the seat of the anger is envy. And therefore he was very upset with Ambarish Maharaj. And just because of that, not proportionate to anything was his punishment. What was his punishment? He took forth from his siddhi and from his hair such a powerful creature that it looked as if the end of creation was there. And as that blazing creature came with a trident and it was shaking the surface of the earth, with its footsteps, it came before Ambarish Maharaj meaning to kill him. But what did Ambarish Maharaj do? Ambarish Maharaj's reaction completely shows us the acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian master. Bhagavatam tells us the king, upon seeing this great personality, demonic personality, was not at all disturbed and did not even move slightly from his position. Can you imagine that? Not at all disturbed. Did not even move slightly. In other words, never prayed, Krishna help me. Didn't even pray. Can you imagine? I kept reading these verses and I realized he never said, Krishna please help me. He didn't. And Prabhupada writes in that purport. Oh, by the way, if you want to know, it's 9.447. It's 9.447. And Prabhupada says very nicely there, a pure devotee of Narayana is never afraid of material danger. And he gives the example. Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father, but he was not afraid. And he was a 5-year-old boy. And this is another example Prabhupada gives. Ambarish Maharaj. He was also not afraid. So Prabhupada tells us, if we want to accept Krishna as one's guardian, we must learn to tolerate awkward positions in this world. Such a nice point in the purport. You all know the meaning of awkward, right? It's a very awkward thing, isn't it? Awkward. When you're put in an awkward situation, it's not like you know what to do, you don't know whether you should go this way, that way. Ambarish Maharaj, awkward situation. What is this? I just put one drop of water in my mouth and something that should be killing the whole creation is coming to kill me. Awkward situation. But he was not disturbed. Why? Look at the last line of the purport. Because he depended fully on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, such a devotee is never disturbed by inimical activities. Never disturbed. So this is a very important point we must remember. Ambarish Maharaj did not even bother to call out for Krishna. Why? Because he knew that if Krishna wants to save me, he will save me. If Krishna doesn't want to save me, then what can I do? Krishna is Krishna. He is all in all. He is Tattva Jivanam. And this is the mood of a devotee. So we must accept that Krishna alone is our guardian. He is our master. And whatever happens, whatever he does is always good for us. Another example of a devotee in Bhagavatam that's just now coming to mind is Jada Bharat. You all know Bharat Maharaj, right? In 5th canto, Bharat Maharaj was such an exalted king who renounced all his kingdom and became attached to a deer. And finally the deer, just before he died, he sat down and the deer held his hand just like a son holds the hand of the father. Can you imagine? If I were the sons of Bharat Maharaj, I'd be very upset. You left me and then in the end, before you died, the beneficiary was the deer. It's just too much, But that's life. We think we are renounced, but are we renounced? So Bharat Maharaj was caught in the attachment and subsequently became a deer. But Krishna's mercy, remember last week we spoke about his mercy? His mercy was so powerful that he granted, just like he granted Gajendra remembrance, he granted the deer remembrance that past life I was Bharat Maharaj. And this life I'm a deer. But I don't want to get into the same problem of next life. So what do? The deer, as Bharat Maharaj, withdrew from this world and concentrated on Krishna. And in next life he became Jada Bharat. Jada Bharat means one who is foolish as far as the external world is concerned, but deeply renounced as far as the spiritual world is concerned. So what did Jada Bharat Maharaj do? He was he acted like he was not bothered about the world. And one day dacoits caught him, and they wanted to sacrifice him to the goddess Kali in the temple. So they set him up now for the sacrifice. Jada Bharat did not even protest. In his mind and heart in Bhagavatam, he thought, Krishna is my maintainer, he is my protector, I am convinced of his protection, I must accept this and I will reject whatever that's unfavorable. At least Krishna is so kind that at the moment when they will kill me, I am now able to remember Krishna. My faculties are there, I can still remember him, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just like Vritasur. Even if you kill me now, Indra, doesn't matter because I will remember Krishna now. Thank you for that. That's what they mean. So, but Mother Kali had different ideas, right? When Mother Kali saw that the devotee of the Lord did not even lift his finger, like Ambarish Maharaj did not lift his finger, Goddess Kali decided, let me step in now. And she practically chopped off the heads of all the dacoits. If you read that chapter, right, in today's version, it's definitely RA. It's really heavy. It's Mother Kali is just running riot. She's tossing heads around, like playthings. And Jadabharat is just sitting down and chanting Krishna's names. This is because of his faith. So even if Krishna personally doesn't come, don't worry. Goddess Kali will come. That's the message of Bhagavatam. Somebody will come. In our lives, has it not been true? When we've been helpless in life, when we thought that's the end of my life, I don't have Krishna, suddenly a devotee comes into your life. Why? Because Krishna maintains us. And he will never let us down. That is Krishna. Which now brings us to the second last limb. And the second last limb is very nice. It means full self-surrender. What does that mean? Prabhupada, in the purport of the original verse that we spoke about, he says that when we remember that our activities and our desires are not independent, and that we are always dependent on Krishna and we must be aligned to his will, then only we can become self-surrendered. Such a nice point. In case you want to know if there's anything in Bhagavatam that tells us this point nicely, look to 4th canto, 20th chapter, 31st verse. After all this, you all should really, fall at the feet of Prakash Prabhu. Because while you all are seated in nice yogi pose, he's just quickly typing everything. Thank you, Prabhu. And of course, the parampara was started by Dinavasya Prabhu, so we have to thank him too. Do you see 4:20:31? Chant the verse with us. Tvanmaya yadha janaisha kandito yad anyat asha sharitar manodutta yatachare bhagahitam pita swayam tatha tvameva dhasya samehitam. Read the translation together. My Lord, due to your illusory energy, all living beings in this material world have forgotten their real constitutional position. And out of ignorance, they are always desirous of material happiness in the form of society, friendship, and love. Therefore, please do not ask me to take some material benefits from you. But as a father, not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son, please bestow upon me whatever you think is best for me. This is the meaning of Atma Nikshepa, self-surrender. And Prabhupada says so nicely in the purport, it's the duty of the son to depend on his father without asking anything from him. What a nice statement. It's the duty of the son to depend on the father, but don't ask anything from him. Difficult, right? Think about it. That means I depend on my father, but cannot ask anything. Are you feeling constrained now? Do you feel like you're tied down? Oh, then how? I have to ask, right? You can. But what should you ask? That whatever you think is good for me, you give me. Again, constrained, isn't it? Because in our minds, often we think we know what's good for us. But by now, I hope your life will tell you that very often we don't know what is good for us. That's why we're in difficulty. So actually, Prabhupada gives such a nice point here in this prayer, that we should understand that as long as we are surrendered to Krishna, Krishna takes charge. The moment Arjuna surrendered at the lotus feet of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, Mayai Vaite Nihata Purvamena, everyone who was supposed to be killed were killed. It was over. All Arjuna had to do was just surrender. I'm confused, I'm bewildered, I am now a surrendered soul. Please instruct me. From that moment, whoever was supposed to be killed, they were already killed. And that is the beauty of this limb that we must understand. Even Vritasura, towards the end of his life as he was fighting with Indra, he aligned himself to the wishes of Krishna, didn't he? And when he aligned himself to the wishes of Krishna, he was prepared to meet death. And once he died, his soul left, for the spiritual world. And he was very peaceful and blissful. But Indra had to stay behind and spend 365 days using the thunderbolt to behead Vritasura, who was long gone by then. Long gone by then. What a wasted endeavor. 1 year to cut off somebody's head when he's long past dead. And after that, to spend hundreds of years running around from sin personified because of the sin of killing a Brahmana. But what did Vritasura do? He gave up, but he accepted. He became aligned. He felt protected. He accepted that Krishna was the maintainer. And therefore, his final prayer was, whatever you want is best for me. I accept it. That's why my Guru Maharaj summarized Sharanagati by saying, whatever Krishna wants, we want. Whatever Krishna doesn't want, we don't want. That's it. And if supposing we want something and suddenly it doesn't happen, then Krishna did not want it. Therefore, we don't want it. And in those few lines, the whole principle of Sharanagati is actually given. We have actually one last limb, isn't it? And that limb is actually the limb of meek and humble. We will put aside that limb for our last session together next week, because that requires an entire space of time. And the best way to understand the last limb is actually to understand 4 prayers of Brahma in the 3rd canto, 9th chapter. But we'll do that next week, because we'll need an entire morning or afternoon or evening, depending on when we want to have the class, but we're not telling you. We'll have that for that. So Swami Prakash Prabhu, I think we have a good timetable now. Parikshit Maharaj and everything else to wrap up, and 4 prayers of Brahma, and that will wrap up everything. So how do we wrap up today? We can understand one important point here, that this whole concept of surrender is actually known in Bhagavatam as Atma-nivedana. Atma-nivedana. And Prabhupada, says very nicely that Atma-nivedana refers to a stage when one has no motive other than to serve Krishna. When our motive is correct, all the 6 limbs of surrender will automatically align itself. This is a brilliant point that the Acharya gives us. And it's found in the purport of the 7th canto, 5th chapter, 23rd and 24th verses. When you have time, you can look at that. Prabhupada says there that if you don't have any motive other than to serve Krishna, and if you perform your activities only to please Krishna, then what happens? Then in that way, automatically, you reach the stage of Atma-nivedana. I think we have a substitute speaker now. Shyam Sundar is getting ready to take classes. So that's the first point, Prabhus and Matajis. No? And in the purport of that verse, Prabhupada says the best examples of Atma-nivedana are found in Bali Maharaj and Ambarish Maharaj. And Prabhupada says Atma-nivedana is also found in the behavior of Rukmini Devi in Dwarka. You know why? Because when Rukmini Mata wrote that beautiful letter, at the end of that letter, right, after giving all the suggestions, Krishna, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, she finally said, you know what, do what you want. Because ultimately, it's up to you to come. And I can only wait. So that's Atma-nivedana. And the last example of Atma-nivedana to end today is Draupadi Mata. Draupadi Mata did that too in the Mahabharata. You remember when Yudhishthira Maharaj had lost everything in that gambling? He lost himself also, and then he wagered Draupadi. And when he lost that also, Dushashan and Duryodhana immediately told the guard to go inside and call Draupadi out. The guard went inside and said, you have just been lost in a wager. Imagine being told that. And now you come. Draupadi said, you go out and ask, who is it who wagered me? And the security guard said, Yudhishthira Maharaj. Then she said, you ask him this question. You asked him whether he wagered me after he lost his freedom or before his freedom. And so he went out and he asked that question. And Yudhishthira Maharaj could not even reply. He looked down in shame because he knew the answer to the question. And at that point, security guard went inside again. And he said, I'm told that you have to come out anyway. And she runs to Gandhari. Her hair is unbraided now, and she's in a disheveled state. She was not in a proper state to be seen, but she runs to Gandhari. And she falls at Gandhari's feet. At that time, the security guard has come back second time and said she's not coming. Duryodhana tells Dushashan, go and bring her out. Dushashan goes in front of his mother. He pulls the dark, black, curly, lustrous hair of Draupadi Mata. And as he pulls her out, he says, it doesn't matter whether he lost and then wagered and then lost. Your dharma now is that you belong to Duryodhana. So fulfill that dharma. That is what Dushasana said. And so Draupadi is dragged out in great ignominy, in great shame. And when she comes out, what does she see? An assembly full of illustrious persons. And when Dushasana pulled her out in the assembly, her clothes were beginning to loosen, her hair was no longer braided. And at that point she cries out. She says, Krishna, my Lord, please save me. Because you are the only shelter and I have no other shelter except you. She says that. Then she addresses all the elders, but no one can help. Even Bhishma had to tell her that the situation is so complicated, it could go this way or it could go that way in terms of arguments. Then, when Dushasana decided enough is enough of all this talk, what did he do? He started pulling her upper garment. And when he did that at the behest of Duryodhana. Mahabharata tells us, Duryodhana turned to Dushasana and said, enough, brother, now do what is necessary. In Mahabharata it is stated, when he instructed his brother to take the clothes of Draupadi out, he did not realize he was actually moving his brother towards death. Because that will kill Dushasana in the end. So Mahabharata tells us Dushasana started pulling her upper garment. Because the Pandavas had given the upper garment. And the only upper garment left was the one on Draupadi. And so by that logic which was perverted, Dushasana started pulling the upper garment. Draupadi resisted in the beginning. She resisted it while looking in the direction of her husbands. But none of her husbands could protect her. Because they themselves were in the clutches of this terrible situation. She looked at all the elders. They could do nothing to help her. And then Draupadi decided, let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because he is the only one who can give shelter in all circumstances. Her prayer is very important. She threw both her hands in the air and she started praying. She says, Oh Govinda. She calls Krishna Govinda. It's an irony. Govinda is one who gives pleasure to the senses. And yet her senses at that moment are anything but pleasure, isn't it? And yet she has full faith that Krishna, even in this difficult situation, he can give pleasure to my senses. Imagine the faith that Draupadi had. She had so much faith that she could think about Krishna as the giver of pleasure, not even the protector. How much faith you must have when you call someone in that way. So she calls him as Govinda, one who gives pleasure to the senses. In other words, she's telling Krishna, even though my senses are paid now, only you can give them pleasure. The next page she addresses Krishna, O Lord of the O Lord who pervades the entire universe. She's now signaling to everyone that Krishna is not only in my heart, but Dushasana, Duryodhana, all of you, he is the witness to your crimes because he is also in your heart. That's why she calls him that way. Third, she calls him by Krishna because Krishna is all attractive. And she refuses to lose touch with the attractive nature of Krishna. That is a devotee. And then she calls him, O Keshava, because Keshava is the killer of the Keshi demon. And now she is invoking the awesome power of Krishna to kill the demoniac tendency of forgetting Krishna. Not killing Dushasana, but forgetting Krishna. That is why he is Keshava. And then she calls him, O husband of the goddess of fortune. Why? Because now she's saying, I only have one husband in this entire universe. And the only husband who can ever protect me is the supreme husband of everyone. And that is the original Purusha. And that is Krishna. So now she's turning to Krishna because he is the supreme husband. And finally she calls him, O Lord of Vraja. O Lord of Vraja. Vrajanath. That's what she's calling him. You are present wherever your devotees are singing your glories. And by saying that, she is hinting to Krishna that Krishna, in the most difficult of situations, I am now singing your glories. Please, you decide now, she says. I surrender myself to you. And please save me. That's it. That's all she did. And the sari cloth never stopped unraveling. Dushasana gave up. Others gave up. and Draupadi Mata became victorious. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudeva ki, Nitai Gaur Premanjana. Are there any questions? I can take one question.